Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Ryan Tamori. This is a live stream of the Pit Press podcast, which is not really a podcast. We're live. Well, we're here to react to Selection Sunday. UNM, obviously, automatic bid, beating San Diego State on Saturday in the Mountain West Conference tournament championship game. And we wanted to talk about that, but then the NCAA tournament decided to seed the Mountain West. So I thought that was more newsworthy. And a lot of unhappy people. So anyway, we'll get to it. Joined, as I always say, joined by the gang that is not related to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'll start in the Bay Area, a two-time offensive lineman for the one, the only San Juan Mendoza, and played for Damian Segura, Mr. Richard Thompson. Richard, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. Feeling grateful that the Lobos won that game last night. Extra grateful now after seeing the outcome of the brackets here. So ready to talk about it and get it going. Thanks.
Perfect. And you can follow him at NM Sports Capper. He's going to have a lot of insight because he follows us pretty closely. Mr. Jacob Neff. Hey, man, how you doing?
Doing good, Ryan. Ready to talk about seedings, fresh off of St. Patty's Day dinner. So lots of corned beef and potatoes and carrots. So I'm going to try and chug my way through this one. Gotcha.
All right. And from beautiful Silver City, New Mexico, he's the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs, and he is a Lobo fan since 1970 and a UNM alumni. His name is Mr. Ed Nunez. Senor, how are you doing?
Just anxiously waiting to get out of here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, but I'm doing well. Looking forward to talking about the season with you guys.
All right. And so when we changed up what we were going to do last minute, and we decided I'm going to talk about the seating and maybe some lines, gambling lines, and the oddity. And for those of you that chime in, maybe the bias that the committee has, and I'll give my 2 cents. We'll all give our 2 cents. I was like, man, we need a member of the media. And then I get a text from James Barone that, and I'm quoting you, and I'm sorry,
go ahead,
that seed was bullshit. I don't want to get you in trouble. I'm the Santa Fe, New Mexican sports reporter, Mr. James Barone. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, and hey, as long as I didn't put that on the Santa Fe New Mexican Twitter account, I think I'm okay with that. But yeah, it was kind of weird. You go from outrage to, or it started with depression because you're like, wow, they weren't even going to make it, and then it was just like outrage, like, how were they not going to make it? So obviously that's kind of where that stemmed from. But I'm glad you gave me an invite for all of this.
No, happy to have you join us. And I thought it'd been funny maybe if Will joined us. But anyway, I want to thank our sponsors: Affordable Solar, Hydro Bar, Turquoise Desert Tap Room, and Abrazo Homes. I'm going to get to some of the comments. Legalize mollies. We got hosed. I thought it was something completely different. We got hosed. Hope our boys use it as fuel. Subject 62. Boise got really hosed. I will say this. When I saw the Boise State reveal, I thought, man, teams are in trouble. And Neff, we'll get to you. UNM probably didn't make the tournament if they didn't win the automatic bid. Legalize Mully again. No respect for any Mountain West teams other than San Diego State. And even the matchup is a rough one. Vegas thinks not. Miguel Sanchez. Clear message is that the net is only used for P5 conferences. SOS and P5, Q1, Q2 wins only for wins over P5 teams. Please feel free to join in this conversation. That's why we're coming to you live. YouTube, and we're live on the Artist, formerly known as Twitter X. So UNM draws an 11 seed in the West. They will play Clemson as a 6 seed on Friday in Memphis, Tennessee. We don't have a time yet. And this is very, very interesting because I had to use ESPN Bet. Wasn't too thrilled about that. But, and by the way, I went to print the brackets on ESPN. It was last year's. Good job, PDA. Good job to the worldwide leader. UNM is not a 1.5 point favorite, Neff. A 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to go to you first. I want your thoughts on the overall seeding of UNM, your thoughts, and the point spread. And I got to throw out my business partner in this endeavor, Eric Moulton, UNM net 22. What's the point? I guess there's some reasoning to that, but your thoughts?
Well, the seating is complete bullshit. I mean, if you watch the morning game again, VCU versus Duquesne, and you think that Duquesne is on the same level as the University of New Mexico, you need your eyes checked. You need to check yourself into the ER instantly, because there's something completely wrong with that. For that team to be seated 2 spots off of UNM, what did you evaluate? They said they stayed up all night and did it till 2 a.m. Maybe they should have got some sleep, because that's just terrible to me. The next thing that drives me nuts is you can see that obviously the betting lines, the public, everybody thinks that UNM got underseeded, because you don't see very many 11 seeds favored over a 6 seed in a bracket. And it opened at -1.5, and within 30 minutes it jumped to -2.5. So that kind of goes to show you what the public, what the look of the entire nation thinks about this matchup, what they think about UNM. I think they were totally underseeded. I'll be honest with you. A lot of the seedings in the Mountain West didn't make sense to me. Exactly what these guys are talking about with net rankings, you might as well just throw them out the window, because you get the 22 overall in the net and you get seeded as the 42nd best team in the bracket. That's what their overall seed was. That's pretty disgusting. And if you go and look at any of these other media outlets right now, Field of 68, whoever you want to follow, there's a lot of people saying the Mountain West got screwed, and it's very evident, because I mean, we barely snuck 6 teams in by the hair of our chin, because 2 of them got in at the last second when we thought that they were probably comfortably in. So it kind of goes to show you what they think about the Mountain West. I guess now it's time for the Mountain West to make their point and show that they're a top basketball conference in the country.
I'm glad you mentioned Field of 68. Here is Jeff Goodman from the Field of 68 about an hour ago. This is courtesy of Field of 68, I think, Media Network. He was here for the CSU UNM game last month. I like what they do. They're pretty, I just like their graphics. I like their appeal. As I've fallen in love more and more with college basketball, I like what they do. They've had a little bit of controversy and whatnot, but here's what Jeff Goodman had to say.
First, let me read them off, Brad.
Go ahead.
Brad, let me read these off at what we had them and what they ended up being. Okay, so San Diego State, like you said, we had as a 5, they were a 5. Utah State, we had as a 7, they were an 8. Nevada, we had as a 7, they were a 10. Boise State, we had as an 8, they're in the play-in as a 10. Colorado State, we had as a 9, they're an 11. New Mexico, we had as a 9, they are an 11. So absolutely, the league earned no respect, and I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with it. I've seen these Mountain West teams. I'm not saying they're going to go to the Final Four necessarily, but I don't think they deserve getting screwed like they did here by the committee.
100%. I think Nevada is the most extreme case I've seen in a long time, because they were the one team in the league that went on the road and got crazy good wins. They won at Utah State. They won at Colorado State. They won at Boise State. They were the only team all year to win at the league champion Utah State. Steve Alford made a little joke that, they should have won the league if Utah State didn't have an easier in-conference schedule. But across the board, they had winning records. They had great marks. They slipped a little bit in net and so forth into the 30s. But in terms of the merits and the bag of goods they brought to the table, they should have easily been at least a 7.
First, let me read.
Well, sorry about that clip there, but yeah, I wanted people to hear that because they had defended the Mountain West all year. They were very high on them. James, you're on this podcast because you shot me a text, even though we are media peers, we're friends. And I was like, "Oh, you're coming on now. You're getting on the live stream with us." You just straight up texted me, and as I already mentioned, the seating was bullshit. I want your thoughts.
Well, it's interesting because in the short amount of time since the seedings have come out, I was just reading up on a few things, and I think the committee, the chairman of the committee, I think has come out and elaborated a little bit more on the seedings. And one of the things he pointed out was with the Mountain West that they didn't have a lot of non-conference wins that were, Q1, Q2, what have you, that most of those wins came from within conference. And so they kind of got docked for that, which kind of leads me to kind of wonder, okay, well, explain Virginia then. I mean, they had 3 Q1 wins, and I believe 2 of them were against ACC teams. You look at you look at some of the Big 12 teams. I mean, Michigan State. I think we were kind of talking off air there about how does a 19 and 15, 19 and 14 team get in as a 9 seed? It's not even like they barely got in; they were in comfortably. And so I think there is a bit of I don't know if I want to call it recency bias, but obviously I think there's a bias that goes that kind of caters toward the Power 5 conferences. And in this case, I really do think you're looking at the Big 12, the Big 10 in particular, maybe the SEC to a lesser extent, but still, I mean, for the Mountain West to get 6 teams, and yet you had 2 teams that are in the play-in game, and you had 1 team that everybody thought was in after they had beaten Boise State and got to the championship game, regardless of whether they beat San Diego State. I think everybody kind of assumed that they were in. And then you come out and you see them get the 11. I mean, I honestly thought when we got to the West region and I didn't see Nevada in, I was thinking Nevada was the team that was in the most trouble. And then when I saw UNM with the 11, there's just kind of this light bulb that goes off, and you're like, wow, they weren't even going to get in if they hadn't won the Mountain West tournament. And then when you looked at how they seeded the teams that they didn't expect to get in, and I think there were 4 teams that, and including New Mexico, that they were talking about that fit that category. They were all seeded, behind UNM. I think you're talking about 11 and 12 seeds there. I mean, it definitely spoke to, okay, what are they seeing that we're not, and how are they determining what's more value? And I didn't really hear that even in the interview that they had with CBS. What were the metrics that they looked at when you're looking at, say, UNM versus a Virginia, or Seton Hall over a Virginia, or even, for that matter, a CSU? I mean, because when we looked at when they brought out the seeds of all the teams, UNM ended up 42. Virginia was considered the last team in, and they were 41. CSU's in the play-in game, and they're 44. So that leads me to believe either they were the last team out, or CSU was going to be the team out of the play-in game, and UNM was going to be the one going to Dayton. I just think people, especially a lot of the experts, especially when you look at a lot of the bracketologists, I think they were mystified by how they were ranked, considering the metrics that they were using, which I think they were assuming this committee was going to use because they've been talking about it so much over the last couple of years. And yet, when it came down to it, they weren't even going to get in. I mean, everybody made a big deal about Indiana State being the highest seeded team in the net rankings at 29, but UNM was 22? And had they not won the conference tournament, they weren't getting in. So, you got to ask yourself, what were they seeing that we weren't? And they really haven't given a good enough explanation, I think.
We have very important breaking news on here, and I don't have I don't have a fake breaking news thing. UNM will play Clemson at 1:10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Friday, and that game is on True TV. So there you go. Ice Ice Baby, stop, collaborate, and listen. Yes, we mentioned that Clemson is a 2.5-point favorite. I tweeted out that 4 of the 6 matchups, the Mountain West teams are favored. We'll get into that later. We're getting all our thoughts on the seeding. I'm going to finish with Ed last because I felt just the newsworthiness, and James Barone and I can teach a lesson on what's newsworthy in journalism. I thought that the seeding was a little bit more at the moment than what UNM had just accomplished 24 hours ago. That's the age and day we live in regards to everything on the internet, and that's why I don't work for a newspaper anymore. I'm going to go to the Bay Area. Mr. Richard Thompson, I wanted your thoughts overall on the seeding and any other general thoughts that you had.
Even though the seeds are a lot lower than we expected, I think being a 6-bid conference is great. I mean, Big 10 had 6, SEC 8, Big 12 8, ACC only had 5. So having more than the ACC, that has to be historic in its own right. And I think, like James has pointed out, it's just kind of disappointing when you see the outcome of the seeds and realizing that the Lobos were not going to be in this tournament if they had it won. And we all thought they had probably earned that right with the win over Colorado State. So when it comes down to it, it looks like what I had heard is true. Being hot at the end of the season and going on a run at the end of the year really doesn't put you in a better place, because it looks like the brackets were already selected maybe a week ago, and the icing on the cake was just these bid stealers and the end of the season conference tournament too. So, we thought the seeds in the Mountain West would probably be a 5, a 7, a 7, a 8, a 9, and a 10, and they were all a little past that. So ride of emotions here in the past 24 hours, riding a high last night, and now I think a tough matchup lies ahead for New Mexico, and I can't wait to talk about that more with Clemson.
I will say this about the matchup with Clemson. It's nice. You're getting I don't know. I thought about Dabo Sweeney and the kid from Spartanville or Spartan. Anyway, not getting off on a tangent there. I think that's what the tournament's about. You get a matchup like that from a big boy conference. At least it's not, I wish I had Ben Affleck queued up. At least it's not the SMOT kids. No Harvard, no Stanford, no Cal State Fullerton, Mr. Ed Nunez. I'm going to you as a residential Lobo historian. You've got me beat on that stuff. And James Barone, if I'm offending you with that comment, I'm sorry. But I want to get your thoughts on the seeding. And I want to get your thoughts on what we just witnessed over Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and where that is in the echelon of UNM men's basketball history, because it was quite a run.
It was, and I think James really explained, and so did Rick, and so did Jacob, about ratings and rankings and all those things, and they kept hyping up the Mountain West Conference all season long. And that Rick's right that they did get 6 teams in is good. But I got to say that I said this online today, that I thought maybe a 6, and I was way off. I wasn't even close, because of the run at the end of the season, because of the tournament run and the way they ran through the Mountain West tournament. And as it turns out, and as James said, they wouldn't have even been in had they not won the tournament. And it's when I saw the seeding for Nevada, and then Nevada's a 10 and New Mexico's an 11, I was like, and then Boise State's a play-in. Imagine how they feel. Boise State had a pretty solid season, and they've got to play in to get into the tournament. So is it bias up? San Diego State ended up with a 5, which Ryan, you said you're on board with that. They're going to get that respect because of going to the championship game last year, but that respect did not filter down to the rest of the Mountain West Conference as far as seedings go. So it is what it is. And Clemson, it's a tough matchup. They beat North Carolina. They lost to Duke by 1. They play the ACC. It's going to be a tough one for New Mexico. There's no doubt about it. But that they're favored by 1.5. You said by 2. That's mind-boggling to me. That really is. Of course, I'm hoping they're going to win. But I mean, and James, I think you're right. The committee is, what are they going to say? They're not going to get. You talk about metrics and everything else that they're looking at. They're not going to have a good explanation where we're going to say, "Oh, okay, we understand that." There's no way we're not going to understand what they we're looking at as far as some of the seedings, even with the Mountain West and some other teams in the tournament. As far as the 4 games New Mexico won, I thought they took that mentality that their NCAA lives depended on it, and as it turned out, they did. Every game that they won, including the Air Force, 4 games in 4 nights is emotionally taxing on any team. And James, you just covered the state tournament. You know that better than anybody, man. It takes a lot out of you. But I'm going to say this, man. I thought yesterday, and several of us here, including me, have criticized Jalen House. I've been very critical of him when he's needed to be criticized. And I thought he played very well as Mountain West Conference tournament MVP. And they don't win it without him. Yes, Donovan Dent played great. But think about yesterday's game. Donovan Dent is sick. He can't even play. So there are a lot of things that are stacked up against him, and they still found a way to win. So you got to give them that. You really do. Because when I go back to what James says, if they don't win this game, they're not even in the tournament, man. So I think it's, again, the matchup against Clemson is something to prove. Everyone's already saying, man, one and done. They're done. They're not going to win, although the Las Vegas odds makers don't think that. So I think the tournament run was reminded, you heard Pitt West in the background. It was great to hear the fans in Las Vegas really cheering on the Lobos. I enjoyed the heck out of it every single game. So they've got a tough task against them, and there's nothing else. What can you do? You're going to have to play who's in front of you. So I'm ready. I'm ready for the Lobos to meet that challenge too. I thought they did a great job of playing 4 games in 4 days and winning the tournament. I don't know how many of us thought that they would do that. So here we are.
This guy right here did not think they could win 4 games in 4 days. I thought it was over after Boise State. I thought Boise State matched up really well against them, but they did it. And I truly thought they were a bad matchup for Colorado State. I thought they were going to kick the crap out of Colorado State, and they did. They won 3 games in 3 days by double digits. So that was very impressive. I'm getting some comments about Clemson. We'll get into that a little bit later. We are going to have a preview podcast, kind of talking about the seeding and everything that went down in the last 2 hours. I mean, I don't think that I don't think there was going to be as much outrage as it was within the last 2 hours, 3 hours. But I mean, it was blowing up. The interwebs were blowing up pretty insane. I don't think I played Kim English here. The Providence head coach, who he's now my favorite coach in all of America. I'm trying to remember if I already played this or if I played it off record, but I'm playing it again.
Yeah, I think the analytics are bullshit, right?
It's the word of the day is bullshit. I wanted to give my thoughts, and then we'll get into the bracket a little bit and the other seating around the Mountain West Conference. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I love a good conspiracy theory. The last 2 times UNM was in the tournament, they lost to Harvard as a 3 seed, and they lost to Stanford as a 10 seed. I think there's a little bit of "what have you done for me lately," to quote Janet Jackson, and I'm still in that from Jay Moore's Sports from about 10 years ago. I think the committee there, I really don't want to believe it, but I think there is a real bias towards not only New Mexico, but the Mountain West as a whole. You had 4 Mountain West teams in 2 years ago, and they all got axed in the first round: San Diego State, Colorado State, Nevada, and Boise State, I believe. I know San Diego State lost to Creighton. Memphis got Boise State. Michigan got Colorado State. I think the committee looks at it and not impressed with the Mountain West Conference. It's one of 2 ways. They can disprove that they were misseeded by winning, and I think they can really nail the head on the conference with what the committee thinks of the Mountain West if they do not win. San Diego State is a 5 seed. I'll say it. I don't think San Diego State it's a 5 seed. They play, as Kurt Ross said, they play hockey. I've defended San Diego State. They just lost and they got a higher seed. UNM just won and got an 11 seed, and Nevada got a 10 seed. To me, it's more mind-boggling than anything. But in regards to that, this is just my opinion. This does not reflect our media company. This does not reflect the other guys on here with me. San Diego State's a 5 seed because they figured out how to get to the national championship game last year. There's recognition. That's the Michigan State appeal. Kansas, I try to not curse on here. Kansas fucking sucks. They have no Hunter Dickinson and McCullough, and they're a 4 seed, right, Jake? I mean, 4 seed against Sanford. Sanford might get them. I'm getting notifications that people are picking Sanford to go to the Sweet 16. You cannot tell me right now that Kansas is a 4 seed. They just got axed in the first round of the Big 12 by Cincinnati, or the quarterfinals. Iowa State waxed a 1 seed, and they are a 2 seed. They are, to me, if you're gonna everything's thrown out. I always thought it was Janet Jackson, "What have you done for me lately?" Apparently not. I always forget if it's Dre US or Drea US, Drea us. I apologize. Yeah, I think you had tweeted at me negativity. Well, I think I'm giving the Mountain West a little bit of love. Jacob, I wanted to go to you and talk about the other teams that were seeded. Boise State will play Colorado in the 10-10 game. I thought it was 11-11. I guess I'm losing my mind. Virginia will play Colorado State. I love how both Colorado teams are there. The Boise State Colorado game is Wednesday. Colorado is a 2.5 point favorite. I just wanted your thoughts on why in the hell Boise State is in a play-in game. I thought they were much better down the stretch than a lot of these other teams, and I had referenced all year. They went and played a tougher non-conference schedule, and the committee takes a proverbial big fat dump on them.
Yeah, so this is where it doesn't make sense to me. They say schedule harder, and then you schedule harder, and you try and improve yourself, and then you take care of your business in your conference, and then you still almost get kicked out of the tournament. I mean, what side is it? Is it, schedule it and try and improve your wins and make your strength of schedule better, or is it schedule, like Kim English was saying, schedule teams, beat the shit out of them by 40 or 50, make it look good, and put another win on in your record. I mean, you just look at that team, and they played consistent all year. Like Jeff Goodman was saying, they won a couple games on the road. They just beat San Diego State on the road before the conference tournament. They had beaten us at UNM. If you go look through that team's resume, they're probably one of the strongest in the Mountain West. And then you come to find out that they're a play-in game. I think they got totally disrespected. To me, it's probably the biggest travesty of all of them, because that team deserved to be in the field safely. They shouldn't have to be playing in Dayton, on Wednesday to get into the tournament. And then they draw Colorado, who's probably a tough matchup for them athletically. You got guys that are supposed to go into the NBA from that team. They've got a lot of good transfers onto that team. They can shoot, they can run. It's going to be a weird matchup for them. So that's a tough game to draw. If I was Boise State, I would have rather drew Virginia than Colorado in my opinion, because I think Boise State could match up with Virginia pretty well because they both like to play the slower pace. And I think Boise has just as much athleticism, if not more, than Virginia does. So if I'm Boise, I think that not only did they get screwed, but then they got screwed in the play-in game. If that's just my 2 cents. And then, I just wanted to make this statement before we were talking about San Diego State as a 5 seed. San Diego State was 4-9 against quad 1 teams. New Mexico 5-6. So what's so much better about what they did than what UNM did? Okay, they scheduled a couple more of them, but they didn't beat anybody. The only teams that they've beaten outside of the conference that we didn't beat is St. Mary's and Gonzaga. But after that, all their quad 1 wins came within the Mountain West Conference. So how the hell do they get seeded a 5 and then somebody like UNM gets an 11? I mean, just get off of I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be like a hater on San Diego State, because I'll just tell you straight how it is. But San Diego State does not deserve a 5. I know people are saying they do. This team is maybe a 6, if not a 7, because if you look at what they did throughout the season, it was total inconsistency from my perspective. And they rode their name to the 5 seed. So if anybody in San Diego State is saying that they got the best seeding out of everybody in the Mountain West, and I think that they rode that name to that seed line. So that it just doesn't make much sense this year. You could look at all these analytics and stuff, and it's just way off to me. It just seems like they
Yeah, I think the analytics are bullshit, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could look at all this stuff, and it just doesn't make sense. Everything they say contradicts itself. So it's hard to find out. It's hard to figure this whole thing out, to be honest with you.
I just want to go over this real quick. So I think I got it wrong. So full of misinformation again. Colorado is a 2.5 point favorite over Boise State. Colorado State is a 1.5 point favorite over UVA. Nevada is a 1.5 point favorite over Dayton. UAB is plus 7.5 against San Diego State. No, I think I was right. So TCU is a 3.5 point favorite over Utah State. I'm not shocked by that. I think Utah State has ridden. And if you're listening to us from around the conference, got to defend myself. I crap on UNM all the time. I have to say that all the time. And now that we're doing live, I've defended San Diego State. I think I agree with Jacob. I don't think they're what they were. And I think Utah State has survived by the hair on their chin, and they got a little lucky. Good teams get lucky, though. And UNM is a 2.5 point favorite against Clemson. James, with what you hear on that and the other seeding, just, word of the day is bullshit. Just some additional thoughts there.
Well, I think one thing that, maybe doesn't get talked about enough, and maybe this is a factor here, especially with the Mountain West. I think it's pretty clear that San Diego State is benefiting, or they got the bump of being a Final Four participant last year. And so it's almost kind of referencing the whole recency bias thing that I was talking about before, that they get the benefit of the doubt. But I also think too, we sit here and we talk about how great it was for the Mountain West to get 6 teams in, and it's a hallmark year for the conference and everything. And then when you stack them up against, some of the other conferences, the Power 5 conferences in particular, they stand up, to them. But I think what happens is, and I'll kind of piggyback off of the KU thing, and maybe even Michigan State for that matter. I think what happens is that once you've established yourself, it's kind of like you're in the, it's like when you manage to get that password into the speakeasy. It's like once you're in, you're in. And so you stay in until they give you a reason to kick you out. And I think that's kind of part of the problem that the Mountain West has, is that outside of San Diego State, outside of Nevada 6 years ago when they got to the Sweet 16, the conference really hasn't produced all that well when you get to the tournament. And if they're able to do that this year, if you get 3 or 4 teams that get to maybe the first or second round, and maybe even another 1 or 2 that get to the round of 16, all of a sudden, people suddenly take interest in how you're doing and everything. And to kind of parlay this into kind of a larger, broader perspective here. You looked at Kansas, and they finished 6th in their conference, and yet they're considered one of the top 16 teams in the nation, even though they finished 6th. And BYU's an 8, and they were ahead of them, and even in the tournament seeding and everything. I just think that what happens is that once you've established yourself as a power conference, when you get into those situations where you start eating yourselves, which is essentially what happened to the Mountain West. A lot of you looked at the gap between 1st to 7th was 3-4 games. That's not a big margin. You're talking about 2 wins, one way or the other, and you could have significant changes here. And it's the same way with the Big 12. It's the same way with the Big 10, where you get those teams. You're so top heavy that you guys beat each other up, but yet you don't suffer the consequences of it. As opposed to, say, what happened with the Mountain West this year. And I think if the only way the Mountain West can change that narrative is they have to start winning games when it matters the most. You need teams to get to the Sweet 16, to the Elite 8, to the Final 4. It's great what San Diego State did, but now that it's happened, they have to build upon that and continue to do that consistently. And then suddenly, a UNM, isn't a surprise, 11 seed when everybody thought that they were in. We'd be sitting there talking about them probably being a 7 or an 8 seed, or, as it said, a 6 seed. Those are things that you can't deal with in the moment. It's just going to take time. And that's obviously where the next 5 to 10 years are going to be crucial for this conference if it really wants to make its name as maybe not necessarily in that Power 5 collective. At least they're going to be the conference there that's separated themselves from the AAC, from the WAC, from everybody else that's kind of wanting to get to that point. And right now I know there's a lot of disappointment, not just at UNM but everywhere else. I think Utah State, Nevada, Boise State, and Colorado State. Gosh, man, how does half of the conference make up? I shouldn't say half the conference, but how is a half of the play-in teams made up of one conference? And I think that just is basically the NCAA tournament committee basically saying, we don't think you're that good, even though everybody else thinks you are.
I have to. I don't know if I read Matt Norlander, but he had said that he had confirmed with the committee that New Mexico would have not made the tournament if UNM had not won the automatic bid. Rick, I'm going to segue to you and get your overall thoughts because you watched more of the conference this year. I played Phil to 68. I played Kim English. You can think what you want about Barstool on 50-50. This just cracked me up. This was them on their selection show. And if you follow, I'm a Mets fan. So if you follow Frank the Tank, he's funny, but there's a hashtag like Frank is right. I'm not here to promote Barstool. I just want to play this because you'll see where I'm going with this.
No way if they went, although they don't fuck about the Big East because whoever said, or Frank said it is right. They play on Fox. All these games are on CBS. Big Ev said that the Mountain West plays on CBS. How the fuck does the Mountain West get 6 teams and the Big East only gets 3? It's bullshit. It's anti-Italian discrimination. The Big East is an Italian league. It's bullshit.
I'd just like to let that Barstool guy know that the last name of the head coach of the University of New Mexico is Patino. Just an FYI there. Rick, just some additional thoughts when you see this. These lines and some of the other seedings around the tournament. And I don't know, just kind of, I don't know, you got a good sense of humor, just throwing the ball to your court and any additional thoughts.
No, I think a lot of the Mountain West teams have a right to be upset. I think Utah State getting to 9 after winning the conference is a head scratcher for me a little bit too, even though they did squeak out some controversial calls and last second wins via Brown. But I think they had a great season. But when it comes down to it, you guys are all hitting it. It comes to brand recognition, obviously, of what your history is playing in the tournament. What kind of fandom you bring and just what you've done over your time in the tournament. And we're seeing that play out in real time. And whether you like it or not, the first time I ever came on this podcast, I said the only way the Lobos get in is if they win the conference tournament or win the regular season. And that held true to this very day. And that's just the way it's going to be until one of these teams, like James said, can prove on a consistent basis that they can move forward year after year, and it's not just a flash in the pan. But the Big East this year was not a good conference. That guy is just a little sad that they've fallen out of favor, and I can't even name maybe 5 teams in that conference anymore since they've all kind of dispersed over the years. Big East was the top at one time, we know, but I think moving forward, it'll just be interesting to see what kind of transfers come in and out of the Mountain West after this star-studded season, and just moving forward, what kind of coaching talent they retain, or if some of these coaches get offers from bigger schools and decide to move on after seeing how they're treated in the postseason rankings here.
I wanted to David Z, how did Boise have a better conference record than San Diego State and swept them and get a play-in game, and the Aztecs get a 5 seed? Can someone make sense of this? Jacob, that feels like a comment directed to you, even though I already know you kind of mentioned that.
Yeah, they have a better record against quad 1 and quad 2 teams as well. So it just goes on to speak to your name. We've just been talking about it now as the brand recognition. That's the only thing that makes sense, because if you put that team on paper compared to Boise State and you looked at the seasons from what the analytics show you, Boise State is 9-9 versus quad 1 and quad 2 teams. And if I'm not mistaken, San Diego State has a losing record. I know that they had a losing record against quad 1 and quad 2 teams because their quad 1s were 4-9. So, I don't really know what to say about Boise, to be honest with you. I don't understand what they were doing. So where you want me to make sense of it, I'm in the same boat as that person that commented. I don't really know what to tell you. The only thing else I'm going to say is we're talking about how the Mountain West needs to win to make themselves, their names in the conference be recognized. However, my counterpoint to that is if you don't give them the opportunity to have some of these games where they should be higher seeded, then it's tougher for the conference to do that because they continuously get underseeded time and time again. I mean, yes, we could go back to when Alfred was here, but they deserved a 3 seed back then. But every year it seems like the only team that gets seeded correctly or above what they should is San Diego State, and then everybody else has to try and fight their way to make a name for the conference. So the tournament's not doing them any favors by seeding them lower and not giving us any credit, because then we have to go up against some of these bigger teams and then they say, oh, look, the Mountain West isn't that good. Well, I think some of these teams deserved a better seed and a better chance to have an easier matchup in round one, but we're not seeing that because of the biasness towards, you know, what they've done in the past.
BT, the seeding as usual is cracked, and the seeding of all Mountain West teams was strange to say the least. The old guard, Duke, UNC Duke et al. You know, I think throwing this point out there, and if anybody wants to react to it, and all money is driven as CBS, probably all money is driven by CBS. I'm looking at the bracket from CBS because I can't look at ESPN's because it was the PDF of last year's. Once again, great job, worldwide leader in sports. It's like me not knowing the difference between Mountain Standard Time and Mountain Time. The Final Four is in Phoenix, is in Glendale this year. Both those major schools there, NAU, you can throw in there, they did not make the tournament. Utah did not make the tournament. Utah State did. You have surrounding, I don't know what the point is I'm trying to make with this, but you have surrounding schools in the Mountain West, 6-bid league that pretty much all surround the state of Arizona. Food for thought if you want to even go deeper, conspiracy theorist. Ed, I got your thoughts on UNM and the seeding. I wanted your thoughts on maybe who else you like in the Mountain West and what you see with these matchups really quickly.
Yeah, we'll go real quick on that. But I think everybody's right, and especially Jacob about San Diego State. They probably didn't deserve a 5. But real quick too, the loss to Air Force probably hurt New Mexico worse than we're thinking. Now we're thinking they went and won 4 games in a row. They deserve, I thought, a 6. But then looking back on it, the committee might have looked at that and said they lost to a team with a losing record that hadn't won at the Pit in 18 years. That probably hurt them worse than we think. So anyway, I think New Mexico's got a tough matchup. Colorado State, I think, and that's a tough matchup there with Virginia too. But just let me go talk about what James said and Jacob said too. If you want respect, you got to win. Period. And San Diego State's got that respect. New Mexico back as a number 3 seed. Charles Barkley had even said maybe they make the Final Four. They didn't. So I think a lot of their seeding has to go based on what they've done in the past. So the bottom line with all these seedings, and if you want better respect and better matchups, win the games. Period. Don't go out in the first round. And the committee will say that's probably their metrics or criteria, whatever they're used. So that's what my thoughts are. But I think that loss against Air Force hurt them worse than we thought.
Dan Copeland, respect is earned. Mountain West teams need a strong showing along with the 6 teams in this year to help drive better seeding going forward. That's I think we all agree on that. BT, hope the Mountain has a good tourney record starting Tuesday. I think I mentioned that both teams in Arizona didn't make the tournament. That's not true. I'm sorry about that. Arizona, obviously a 2 seed. Kind of looking ahead to Clemson. They beat UNC on the road. And if you're a betting guy like I am, I remember that game. Not good. They got ousted in the ACC tournament. Their last loss was to Boston College. I'm going to gather that's the ACC tournament. They do have a win against North Carolina. They lost to Notre Dame. They lost to Wake Forest. This is a team that they lost to Memphis, beat TCU, beat South Carolina, beat Alabama, and this is a team that beat Boise State over the holidays, I think Thanksgiving, 85-68 at Disney World in I forgot what that's called, like the Disney Classic. what you have to look out for is PJ Hall, their center, 18 points a game in Shine. I can't say this name, Jacob. If you Scheinfenlin, forward, he almost has 10 rebounds a game. They have a couple good guards in Chase Hunter, Joseph Girard the third. You know, you Jacob, you had said that you think that this you think that this matchup favors UNM. That is why Vegas thinks that they were opened up at a 1.5 and it jumped to 2.5. Thank you, Shefflin. Appreciate that. C123. They're crazy streaky. You can read above to see what I mean. Yeah, I'll go back to those comments. Pace is New Mexico's #1 asset going in. Nothing like it. Clemson will be tough if they make it past. They will be okay. Jacob, you had mentioned you like this matchup against Clemson. Your thoughts?
I mean, if we're looking at the 6 seeds overall, we can name them. BYU wouldn't have liked that matchup for New Mexico because they could shoot the lights out. When we look at the other 6, it's South Carolina. They would have slowed the game down, played complete defense against this team, would have really put a hamper to the tempo that we like to play at. And then if you go to the other 6, it's Texas Tech. I think they're a little more talented than UNM. So then you come to Clemson. Clemson sputtered at the end of the season. All these wins that you're giving me, UNC, Boise, Alabama, all came in the first half of the season. This team did not play well down the stretch. They got absolutely destroyed by Boston College in the ACC tournament. Didn't even win a game in the ACC tournament. Before that, you said they lost to Wake Forest. This is a team that's pretty similar to UNM. They like to run. They can go up and down the court. They've got a couple big guys, but they're primarily guard driven. They beat them. Then you go to Notre Dame. Notre Dame played better at the end of the year, but they are a work in progress. They're a very young team. So this Clemson team is up and down. And recently, losing 3 out of the 4 coming into the tournament, that's not going to do them any favors. They're not coming in as confident as they would want to. Let's just say that. Chase Hunter, 0 for 10 in the ACC tournament. That's one of their best players. You can't have that type of night against a team like Boston College, who's not really a defensive team. PJ Hall, you mentioned him. He's a great center. Guy finds a way to get into foul trouble every game. So you've got to figure out a way to get him in foul trouble. He's super aggressive. Shefflin, he's not as aggressive, but he does crash the boards pretty well from an offensive end perspective. And then you got Girard, who obviously transferred in from Syracuse. He was on Boeheim's teams for the majority of his time. This guy's the #1 free throw shooter in the country at 95%. So I will tell you right now, if the Lobos are losing at the end of this game, it's not going to be good because the guy literally doesn't miss free throws. It's like he's a machine. But then when you look across this is why I kind of like this matchup is, you're going to have 3 guards for UNM to the 2 forwards. Clemson plays a traditional basketball lineup of a center, 2 forwards, and a guard. Now that's going to either benefit them in one way, and the reason why I think it will is because of the pace of play. Clemson doesn't like to push the pace. They like to just play at a moderate pace. They like to play more in the half court. UNM's going to push that. So if they have slower guys on the court and UNM has their 3 guards out there running on fast breaks, they're going to have a hard time keeping up with the transition. I think UNM could hop out on them. And I think they've got the bigs that can, hold their ground against PJ Hall and Davis, who's their center. I just don't think that when you look at these matchups, you've got to find the stylistic things that don't match up. And when you go look at those types of things, they're going to want to be the ones controlling the pace. But if UNM hops out on them like they have, I think they could get the lead and run with it. But the key matchup in this game is going to be Shefflin. Who's going to guard him, and how quick do they have to go to Omzil on the bench because they need size? That could be the potential thing. But just matchup for matchup from the very beginning, starting lineup wise, if we get out and run and they're missing shots early like they have been, they could put them in a pretty big deficit pretty quick. So I think it's actually a favorable matchup out of all the 6s that were in the bracket. And that's who I would have wanted to play coming into this rather than the other 3.
That's a very valuable point. I was looking at the other 6 lines. I think BYU, with how well they shoot, you already said it. You stole that thunder. What they did to Kansas at Kansas, what they did in the second half against Oklahoma State. What I watched recently, I thought it would have been a very bad matchup for UNM. Going back to C123, PJ Hall had 1 rebound against Boston College. And he made a comment towards something you were saying. Bingo, Jacob. That's why I asked you to come on the show. And it's Shefflin. I'm sorry, I mispronounced that. Pace, I think I already played that or showed that. Going back to C123. Also, Clemson has lost 3 of 4. Super cold right now. Also, will not have played in 9 days by the time of the game. That is not a good thing for them. PJ Hall hasn't experienced quick doubles all this year consistently. If UNM goes with a similar game plan as Boise and SDSU games, it could leave Hall startled. Rick, from a basketball standpoint, when you hear that and those matchups, what do you think?
Based on what that commenter just said, I agree that you're going to have to double PJ Hall. He's one of the most efficient offensive players in the entire country. But the thing is, he doesn't just play on the block. He shoots a lot of threes from the top of the key and shoots a lot of long jumpers. And to me, that gives a mismatch for UNM, because as we saw with Air Force, UNM jumps at every shot fake at the top. Petritis lit him up. Toppin isn't really comfortable coming and guarding a big man outside and coming out on a shooter, in my eyes. While he's great defensively down low, we've also seen Nelly sometimes go for those ball fakes. So I think Hall gives a bigger mismatch than what you guys are talking about. Obviously he's going to be their leading scorer, but I think Gerard also, that guy is just a maniac shooting threes. He'll come off the screen, he'll come down on the fly. And I think just keeping House and Dent out of foul trouble, and hopefully both of them healthy at the same time, they can cause some havoc, because this Clemson team does turn it over 10 times a game. They make 8 threes a game, get about 36 rebounds, and they give up 71, but while scoring 77. So I know they haven't been hot, but when I just watch some games of them playing, they have, I think, mismatches for us. They're a lot longer. And like Jacob's saying, if we have to go to our post depth early, it's going to be a mismatch for Amzil down low. And that's what I see just watching a few of their games.
I watched that North Carolina game. They looked really good. BT, could it be that UNM was not considered as was Trump in 2016 against Hillary? Thus, the selection committee had their minds up before the Mountain West Conference tournament started. I'm not acknowledging that comment. Get the fuck out of here with that. C123. Yep, he shoots a ton. He's the thing, though. He's not good off the dribble. Like Ladie, they can run him off the 3-point line and recover. He's not super quick. Gerard is not quick at all. UNM can run Hall and Gerard off the 3-point line and be in a good spot. By the way, Clemson has no depth either. Jacob also thinks that Utah State doesn't have no depth. That just kind of popped in my mind. Godfrey is the only one that can shoot the block. Bass Latte doesn't play hard and is hard. Going to another basketball guy. Ed, when you hear that, does that kind of maybe change your perception going up against Clemson?
Great breakdowns by Rick and Jacob, who've seen Clemson. I've not seen them. I've been got to cover a million games. It's hard for me to come just watch the Lobos and Western up here. But I think the key to me, when you mentioned, Jacob, the guards that you feel like New Mexico can outrun them and maybe punish them in transition. The key to me is pace, and the key to me is Jalen House and Dent. Yeah, Jacob, you've mentioned that you thought Dent should have the ball a lot in his hands, and I don't disagree. He makes great decisions, the better decisions than House did. But we can't argue that House made some great decisions and great shots in the Mountain West tournament. We can't argue with that. But I think we don't know what he played great in the Mountain West tournament for sure. House, pushing with pace and pushing under control, emotionally under control. He's still woofing. I just don't know against Clemson, how will he be there? I guess that's my concern. And but when you mention those matchups there, and I think James Barron, I always look at teams trending in the state tournament. Are you trending up? Or are you trending down? And they're kind of trending. You mentioned, Jacob, they've lost 3 of their last 4. They're not trending up. So I think maybe it's a better matchup than we thought for New Mexico. And Amzil, when if you look at it with Ledee, he was going at him WWE style. I thought when he started wrestling with him and denying him position, look at the last couple of possessions for San Diego State. They had to go away from him and jack some shots. So I thought Amzil did the best job that he could in defending Ledee. So if they have to bring him in off the bench, I mean, he's not a post defender, that a natural one, but I thought he did a good job. So I think with Rick and Jacob, with their great explanations on how Clemson plays, I think that makes me think New Mexico might have a better chance than I initially might have thought. And you said some of the games that they played too, Ryan. So maybe it's not as bad as we thought. And Jacob, you thought it was the best matchup out of the 6 seeds that you saw. So you see a lot of college basketball. So much respect there.
I'm going to go to James Barone. When I jokingly say on here, I love watching it. I love gambling college basketball. I didn't play the game. I don't know anything. Very quickly, UNM will start House Mash Denton, Tompin, and Nelly. Clemson starts Hunter, Hall, Chef Gerard, and Jack Clark. Their weird matchup. It's going to be the weird matchup is going to be which of our guards. The 6'8" Clark, also a huge advantage for UNM and Gerard having guard Dent, House, or Mash. Going back to you, I know you've said your piece. We've all kind of said our piece on the selection committee. Very quickly, we're kind of getting to an hour with the stream, but I wanted your thoughts overall. You've covered the UNM program over the years, but your thoughts overall on this season and maybe what a win would do for them in the tournament. I know that sounds like a stupid question, but winning is good. Losing is not good.
Well, I think it's a good step forward, and I think we've seen. I think the best thing I could say about what Richard Pitino's done over here the last 3 years is that you've seen progress. You've seen this team go from 6 wins to 26. They're in the NCAA tournament regardless of how they did that, and I think he's got a good foundation. And and granted, given the turbulent nature of how college athletics in general is, we don't know what they're going to have next year, and obviously we don't want to look too far forward because there's still a season left to be played. But I think a win here would be huge. I think you can go in, into the offseason regardless of who's staying or who's leaving. I think you kind of have a carrot that you can wave in front of prospective transfers and even some of these freshmen coming in. That they're that this is a program on the rise. The run that they had over the Mountain West tournament, to kind of piggyback off of what Ed was saying, was great. And you like that when you see teams making runs like that. And sometimes it often leads to success when you get to the NCAA tournament. But on the flip side too, I know people kind of want to make a big deal about a 9-day break for Clemson. I mean, God, how many times have you seen teams get 9 days off when they desperately need it? Because sometimes, when you're in the grind of a conference or, even at the high school level, you get in the district playing everything and you're just playing, constantly nonstop. Sometimes you just need a break, one, to get guys healthy, two, to maybe adjust on things that you don't normally do in the process of preparing for games. You don't really have that much practice time to kind of work on your weaknesses and your strengths. And obviously Clemson was exposed when you look at how they played the last 4 or 5 games. So I think it's really going to depend on, I think the first 10 minutes are going to be key. If UNM can continue to play well, the way they did over the 4 games there in Vegas, I think that portends well for them. And I think that they'll give Clemson all that they can. But if Clemson comes out and really establishes, their bigs and kind of gets the pace to where they want, where they're not going to play a game in the 70s or 80s, if they get that game in the 50s or 60s, I think, as UNM's experience has shown this year, that's kind of where they struggle. They want to get out, they want to run, they want to play, at pace and force the tempo. And if they can't do that, it's going to be a dogfight, because they don't necessarily match up well, especially, when they're the smaller team in the backcourt. And and I think Ed can attest to this too. I think we talk about, successful teams, your most successful teams tend to have the best guard play because, as great as you can have a kid that's 6'9", 6'10", if you can't get him the ball, it doesn't matter. And, if Clemson can do those things and take care of the ball, and I think that's another thing, not to be understated, if UNM doesn't get turnovers, they tend to struggle. And I think that's something that they're going to need to do if they can put pressure on their guards and get them out of their comfort zone. I think they can make life miserable. And then, we'll sit here and talk about, what could happen with Baylor if Baylor provided Baylor gets past their 3-14 games, and there's never any guarantee of that anymore.
Good old Colgate. They can shoot lights out, right, Neff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like them as much as I did the years before, but I mean, yes, that's going to be their strength, obviously, is shooting. However, so is Baylor's. So they better be on that day, because you're talking about Baylor being one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the country. That's where UNM, if they do win this game, will be tasked heavily on making sure that they guard the perimeter, because that team is one of the most efficient teams in college basketball at shooting threes. So we will have our hands full the next game if we make it through Clemson. But what I will say is Boston College, Wake Forest, both emulate how UNM's lineups look. And they gave them a hell of a time the last 2 games. Where they have length, that's great. However, length doesn't always translate when you have teams that want to get out and run. You can have a 6'8" guy on the wing guarding a 6'5" guard, but that person's going to have the advantage to the basket. They're going to have the advantage down the floor. They're going to be able to run the court better. And then that 6'8" forward is having to guard a guard around the perimeter. So his length is now eliminated. So there is a good matchup in this case. And what I saw from Boston College was get out, run, and hit people in transition for open shots and get to the basket. Got them for quick foul trouble, got them in a huge deficit. They never sniffed coming back in that game. So like James was saying, the first 10 minutes could be a key factor. Let's also remember Clemson hasn't been to the tournament in a long time. This team doesn't have any NCAA experience. So don't give them as much credit as they think that they deserve. This team has no experience in the tournament. So everybody can look at it and say, oh, they're from the ACC, but they've never been involved in this type of tournament either. So the only person on their team that has any experience is Gerard. That's it. So this team's, a rookie into the tournament as well. So I think we drew a pretty good matchup.
Well, he is a friend. There is a reason I asked him to come on and join us. Jacob knows what he's talking about. Like I've said, every game of both teams, I'm a fan of both teams. UNM has the edge going in. I can tell Jacob, he has watched Clemson. I watched that North Carolina game. So that was my perspective of them. Boston College has a lot of guards that can shoot. I don't know their names. I watched them a couple, and I didn't watch that Clemson game. So obviously what they did, I'd have to look at the box scores. They got hot. Boston College looked really good in the first half against Virginia. Virginia defensive, I think how much did Virginia come back? Because it at one point early on that game, I think it was double digits, and you don't hear about Virginia coming back. And a lot of the nation, this is a team that won Tony Bennett's somebody that won a national title in the last 5-6 years, and people absolutely hate watching them. Going back to C123, Clemson is not a team that's going to benefit from a break. The pace, I think I might have read that one. Brad Barnwell is also known for choking. He would have been fired if Clemson didn't make the tournament. There you go. Dan Copeland, Boise State had 5 quad 2 and worse losses, while Aztecs only had 1. Utah State was screwed. Andre S. Fana just called the Lobos over Clemson and the first round. So did Terrence O. Terrence totally agree with Jacob's awesome research. That's not research. He just knows all this off the top of his head. Kind of does, as I do jokingly, it's Jerry Springer, final thoughts. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Rick, I might throw it your way. You are free to say whatever you want. I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but just any final thoughts. And I've really appreciated. I know we've known each other for 22 years. And then I asked you, we were trying to do our own thing. And then I asked you to join us talking Lobo hoops. I know you said you've watched more Mountain West Conference action and more Lobo games than you ever had, I think. I appreciate you, man, and you played the game of basketball. So I've always appreciated your insight and your knowledge. And I'm happy you're with us. I know you're a friend of mine, and as I mentioned, a long time now. But I appreciate you, man. I just wanted to throw that out there, and your insight with what we're doing here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. It's been a great season for all of us, and just the fans jumping in and giving us a hard time or giving us some props. It's always, we love it either way, just to know that people are interacting, and I've really enjoyed it. And one thing I'm just thinking about today is just looking back on the game last night, how crazy it was, the game plan that actually won UNM that game. obviously the defense, and I don't think Ledee shot a shot for the first 7 minutes of the game. So that right there was insane to me. But the whole game plan was House running pick and roll, turning down the pick and going to the hoop himself, and whether he made it or one of the guys got a putback and put it in. And that was basically the offense the entire game, as Brian Dutcher alluded to in his press conference. So just the guts it took by House and the rest of the guys. Nobody on the bench scored, I believe, last night. Mash was 6 for 16, so not a great shooting night, but he made some monster shots. He was hobbled out there. Just the guts that these guys played with, and having to deal with all this outside noise of are they in, are they not, and having to answer questions nightly of whether they think they made it or not. They were able to lock it in for these 4 days, and I think it's something I'm going to remember. I haven't followed college basketball this closely, and I've hopefully brought a lot of insight to the show, and this really just made me grateful to watch this team, what they did, and it's something I won't forget. And whether they win a game or not, I think it's a special season we'll look back on and remember what these guys accomplished, just everything they went through to get here. Injuries, guys going out on mental health issues, coming back, transfers coming in, freshmen playing big minutes, and here they are. So it's just super great to see, and I'm glad we get to do it for another week here.
That's a valid point. We kind of didn't really reflect on San Diego State. If everybody's still willing to stay on, I just felt the newsworthy thing was the seeding. So maybe we did a little bit of injustice to the Lobo fans. I mean, when it was pretty much set in stone that UNM was walking away with Colorado State. I mean, it was, like the good old days, 15, 14, 13 years ago, against getting that matchup in the conference championship against San Diego State. And San Diego State had made it 7 times in a row, and I think had won 4 or 5 of them in the championship game. I think COVID year that Sam Merrill hit a shot. The tournament was a week before. It was early that year. So kudos, that was cool. We're lucky enough to get it before the pandemic. When San Diego State kind of fought back, I was a little worried there. For a Lobo fan, I was watching it with a couple buddies that I hadn't seen in a while. I think Patino and House had said it. It's they were just tough, and I'm quoting them. It was just toughness. We've talked a lot about. I think we've given good insight on this show and this podcast. I think that for 4 days, we got the good House, and hopefully it can continue to roll. He is, and I saw a podcast. I've listened to him a little bit. I really like what they do. Again, I'm not here to butt heads. I've tried to cover everything objectively. Sons of Montezuma, and they asked, whether Jalen House was a showman or a clown. And I said, well, he's both. Unfortunately for Vegas, they got another showman for 4 days there, and I thought it was a phenomenal performance by him. He played really well, because when he's on, he is on, and he's maybe one of the most electrifying players to watch in the country. Now, I will backtrack, and I said post Air Force, he was grittying and they were doing all this, and I was like, you guys haven't won shit. You just got beat by Air Force a couple weeks ago, and at home, you didn't show up, and you just beat them by 30. All right, cool. Again, it's his job. It's not his job to prove guys like me wrong, but by doing what he did, he shut me up. They played well. They played phenomenal. I defend the conference. I thought Boise State maybe was one of the better teams. I thought what Nevada did was really well. Utah State, well, I think they got lucky, was phenomenal to watch. And you can't deny it, whether you're a San Diego State fan, a Wyoming fan, a Fresno fan. And if you watch the conference closely, UNM's a lot of fun to watch. I will give them this. I wish they shot the ball a little bit better. James, I'm going to go again. I don't know shit about college basketball. I don't know X's and O's. I just like watching it and losing money on it. James, I don't think I kind of reflected on, we've been talking for over an hour now. I don't know if I got your reflection on what UNM kind of did in the tournament, but just your overall thoughts on what they did. We really didn't delve into that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Outside of maybe the first 10 minutes of this Colorado State game, I didn't see any of it because I was busy, deep in the bowels of the pit trying to cover as many high school basketball games as I could. So, I was a little absent of that, but, I'll try to, just to use a phrase I used earlier, I'll try to bullshit my way out of it. But I will say this, just in some of the things that I saw and some of the stuff that I read, I think House made a nice adjustment because I kind of thought he'd fallen in love with his jump shot a little bit too much, and I think it was creating a lot of his problems. A lot of times with shooters, and we can talk about this a little bit more, is that sometimes they forget that when it's not there, your best friend is to attack the rim, is to get yourself an easier shot. You hit 2 or 3 good shots, you start to feel that rhythm, and then you start to play a lot better and you start shooting. And then suddenly, you can get outside and you can attack. But I just thought, he had much more aggressive mindset than he did before. And he really carried that team. The one thing that does concern me a little bit, and it's not too much of a problem, just mainly because I think, when you're in the middle of going 4 days and 4 games, you try to limit. You don't try to do anything, unique or special. You just simply try to do what you do best, and you ride that out as much as you can. I know the bench will probably be there, and I think a couple of those guys, Ansel had I think had a good game during the tournament. Most of those guys, it was just they gave you good minutes to just give guys a spell. And if that's all you get out of it, I guess that's great. But I thought House Mashburn, I think. We just have to accept this is who he is. He's never really kind of gotten into a rhythm that I think that he had like he did last year. I think he's a good sidekick to what House is doing. So I think that it was great for him. It's a great confidence boost, and I think and I know Ed kind of referred to it a little bit. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just get on a roll and just ride it, and I think that's what we saw here. And it was great and it was awesome. And just looking at all the videos and everything of, how Lobo fans, took over that place, and the emotion that came out of that win. I mean, that's really heartening to see. And I kind of wondered for a while there where the heartbeat of UNM basketball was, not just in the state, but especially in Albuquerque, because that's where the really the true heart of this program is. And I think we saw it kind of come back to life a little bit this week. And you hope that this isn't just a one-off, and I don't think it is. I think Patino's got a really good plan, and he's done a great job getting this program to where it's respectable. This is a great opportunity, regardless of what happens, whether you beat Clemson or not. Everything's pointing in the right direction, and you got to strike when the iron's hot. And I think there's a great foundation here, and if you can go into next year with some momentum, that would be great. And then all of a sudden you stop talking about whether or not they're going to get in, and then it starts to become how do you play your way into a higher seed and getting yourself into a situation where you can play better opponents and put yourself on the map like we did, like they did, 15, 20 years ago.
It was a great response. I appreciate that. Ed, he said something there. We're going to wrap up here soon. Ed, he said something there, though, emotion. I know you were in Silver City. You watched some of the game. I think you watched majority of the games. And I jokingly always say you're a Lobo fan since 1970. It's something you had said, and I like giving it to your title as being the voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs. But I just to come together like that, I mean, I don't know where you put that on. Maybe I asked you that early in the episode, but where you put that on in the echelon of Lobo basketball. And I hope I'm not repeating myself, but I mean, it's just, we were very concerned that for business, UNM winning is good. Football, it's painful with football. Basketball is bread and butter here. Basketball is king in this area of Central New Mexico. You can even go to Las Cruces. Obviously, you do your road to the pit with high school basketball, and up north, it's a big deal. But James kind of mentioned emotion. I just want to know, you're one of the Eric's not with us, but I mean, emotional wise, you're just happy to see them in the tournament, right? Is there more to that, or I don't know what I'm asking. Hear you out.
Yeah, kudos to New Mexico. They hadn't made the tournament since 2014. Kudos to JT Toppin, who's the co-freshman of the year. Kudos to Mashburn and Dan and House being on the second team All Mountain West Conference team. James, you made a good point. New Mexico was on the verge of really probably with Steve Alford here of being consistent in the NCAA tournament before he went to UCLA. He made some runs. They lost to Harvard, but I thought they were in a good place there. And then he goes to UCLA, and they go through Paul Weir, or their first noodles, Craig Neal, and then Paul Weir, and they take a couple steps back, and then they go to Coach Pitino, and they're on the verge here of making the tournament. But they, hopefully good things happen going forward, and I think that's the key there. We don't know what's going to happen, and I think after the season, who's leaving, who's staying, who's coming. But I think one of the things with New Mexico is established themselves as a place that people may want to come and play or coach or whatever. We don't know what's going to happen, but I think that's where I'm coming from emotionally. I thought I think my whole thing all week was take care of business, act like you belong in the NCAA. We had mentioned Harvard and Cal State Fullerton, but as I mentioned, those games were the final games of the season. You had a chance to redeem yourself. They did. I think that's important. That way we didn't say, well, you mentioned, Ryan, it could have been a very disappointing season. We had said this before the season started. We thought they were going to do this, this, and this. They did. They won the Mountain West Conference tournament. They're in the tournament. So all these things about it was a failure, those things are out the window. They have a chance to advance here. They do. They have a chance to win. And Jacob, after I hear your breakdown about the game, it makes me even more excited because I'm the eternal optimist to have the glass half full. I'll never pick against them, even if I know they're going to lose. I'm not a Pollyanna either saying they're going to win every game. I know better. So I think for me, I'm just happy they're back in the tournament. It's been a while that Mountain West Conference runs back when they won the tournament and turning Las Vegas, Thomas and Mack into Pitt West. You saw that again. So for me, man, I'm on top of the world. I was here in my hotel room yelling like, yes, I was by myself, but I missed my wife because her and I usually watch together. But emotionally, Ryan, I'm very, very upbeat, and especially after hearing Jacob and Rick's explanation about how Clemson plays, maybe it's a better matchup than we thought. So I'm very excited about it.
Jacob and I have an inside joke. He's in his hotel room alone. Another Barstool reference. Very sorry about that for people that don't like them. I'm 50-50 on them. I like some of the things they do. It's like ESPN. It's trash, but I like I like College Game Day. I'm a sucker for it. And 30 for 30. Mr. James Barone, the lead sports reporter from the Santa Fe New Mexican. I really appreciate your time, and I'm really glad you texted me because here we are now. I really appreciated your insight, and I hope you survived the week at the pit with the state tournament.
It's my favorite week of the year, but it's probably the week that I look forward to the least because I get about as much sleep as most people in Las Vegas do, regardless of whether the Mountain West tournament's happening or not. So I'm just glad that I'm still up right now because there were a couple of points on Friday and Saturday where I was just like, man, I could really just find a couple of chairbacks here and just lay out and sleep for about 6 or 7 hours.
I watched as much college basketball this week as I have in my entire life. And with UNM playing at the times they did, and I'm bitching and moaning, but I enjoyed it. I maybe got like 6 or 7 hours of sleep combined over Thursday and Friday. And I woke up Saturday and I was like, we went live at 2. We talked for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I went to bed last night and I missed that ending of UTA and Grand Canyon with the guy throwing the ball. I rolled over and fell asleep. And I've been watching. I got sick about a week and a half ago, and I've been rewatching The Walking Dead. Don't ask me why. So I had on my cell phone The Walking Dead when I woke up, and for 2 weeks I've woken up in like 3 a.m. with The Walking Dead in the background, and it's somebody getting killed. And I'm waking up like, what the hell is going on? And then I had the basketball game on, but I was very if you didn't see the ending of the WAC final the other night, last night, it was fantastic. The guy, one of the players, threw the ball at Grand Canyon, dunked up 10. The UTA, it was like 3 seconds left. The UTA guy didn't like it, and he chucked the ball at him. And somebody mentioned that you don't often see the ball throw, the chuck, hit the player, and it hit him right square in the back. It was phenomenal, Rick. I don't know if you saw it, but that's up your alley. It was great.
I did. It was like Paul Skeens, Pittsburgh Pirates fastball straight down the pipe, man. It had some speed on it. You don't see that every day in a basketball fight, except I think Charles Barkley and Shaq, one of them threw the ball at the other years ago in a fight. But basketball players are the worst fighters and have the lowest connection percentages on any type of strikes by far.
Do you remember, is it is it Chris Dudley that threw the ball at Shaq?
Oh,
The Nick.
you're right. Chris Dudley
Yeah,
nailing
yeah.
Shaq in the back.
Yeah, that's up there, but he was like right in front of him. Like that was a solid, like top of the key. And I don't know if you and I were talking about it this morning. It was really funny. So one last note here. Miguel, as I like to say, Lionel Hutz's alias, Miguel Sanchez. We appreciate Miguel. I appreciate you commenting. My poor pop culture references between It's Always Sunny, Major League, Ghostbusters, The Simpsons 90s. There's a key there. Seasons 3 through 10 reference, and South Park. Seems that the committee, nobody gets them. Seems that the committee message was that Air Force loss counted in the Mountain West Conference tournament. 4 runes really didn't. There might be some truth to that. And I wish you a safe flight home. Actually, I'm going to do this first. I want to thank our sponsors: Affordable Solar, Turquoise Desert Tap Room, Hydro Bar, Abrazo Homes. We have appreciated you. Thank you very much for everything you do. James Barone from the Santa Fe, New Mexican. I appreciate it. And I'm forgetting it. I feel like I'm ending an episode of SNL right now where I won an award because I don't know who I'm trying to thank. What I wanted to do was thank our listeners. We have a lot now. I didn't foresee this. I've really appreciated, like Rick said, I've really appreciated everybody commenting with us on what we do, good, bad, whether you're slinging shit at us or you're like, hey, I agree. We have appreciated it. We've appreciated it. Again, I mentioned live the other day, Eric came to me with this idea because my background was quote unquote media. It was Eric just came to me after I lost my radio show on 610 that the Lobos weren't. He thought the coverage lacked. That's not a knock at the Santa Fe Mexican. It's not a knock at Jeff Grammer. It's not a knock at the TV stations or the local radio stations. That's just what he felt. So we're happy to be doing it. I used to think Super Bowl Sunday was the holy grail, the tournament and the selection show. It's one of my favorite times of the year. Hey, look at this. Nobody told me they hate me. Andreas liked you today, Ryan. It's all good. Well, again, we appreciate all of our listeners. And I said this when I had my radio show. This is not our show. This is your show. This is a show for the UNM fan community. This is a show for the Mountain West Conference community. Jacob and I, he knows more than I do when it comes to it. I love the history of a lot of things in this country. I will battle you to the death with NFL knowledge and college football knowledge, but for history, excuse me. But what Jacob knows is bar none. There's probably nobody in Albuquerque, and maybe you could argue, I don't know, outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, there's probably nobody. That's why I asked him to join me. He and I are good friends, but that's why I asked him to join me. Rick played basketball. Great show tonight. Thanks all. Yeah, we appreciate that. And Ed, he's the voice. He does ProView. He's the voice of Western New Mexico. He's reffed, he's coached, he's played. Eric played. Eric won a state tournament with Capital, which I learned more and more about all the time. That 2014 was like legendary. My high school knowledge in the state is not up to par. James, you look like you're going to say something.
Don't get me started, man. We can spend a half an hour on Capital if me and Eric got in here.
I know if he was here.
Let's not. I would rather not speak about them.
We're gonna wrap up here, but again, we appreciate everybody listening on behalf of Jacob Neff, Ed Nunez, Rick Thompson, James Brown of the Santa Fe New Mexican, my business partner Eric Moulton. My name's Ryan Tamori. I'm going to effort somebody from Clemson to talk about this game, first round matchup. I'm going to effort a UNM basketball player, maybe Coach Patino if they will talk to me. Anybody there, I will effort and do that job. But I appreciate everybody listening. We thank you for chiming in. We will get you a preview of the game and maybe the tournament. Hope you guys do enjoy the tournament. Hope you guys enjoyed what transpired over the last 5 days. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate it.